Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Good morning, Glenn.
What's up, my brother?
Sober.Coffee.
God, it's early, man. Why did you sign up for 6 a.m.?
No, you drove
on the
that
weekend.
ship.
On the weekend.
You drove that
Oh,
ship.
my gosh. No, you're like, hey, let's get it done early. And,
If you want to fit into Glenn's schedule, you got to do it in the early a.m. hours.
I know,
He's a busy guy.
Everyone else is booked. But, hey, I have the 4 a.m. slot available.
Oh, perfect.
Any day, right?
Perfect.
No, that messes up with my meditation time.
So Brian comes in this morning, right, and he's whining. He's a whiner.
You mean our podcast engineer,
concierge,
barista guru?
Yes.
Concierge.
He's whining about power. I mean,
No.
come on. What do you need
Power's
power
overrated.
for? Power is way overrated.
I don't know, man.
All right. How you doing?
We always say that we should wire up before the show
Yeah.
because that's the funniest part.
Okay, we're done. Take it to music,
Dude, I'm
right?
so tired today. I don't know what to say.
Well, get some caffeine in you. We got
But
a
it is
table
what
for
it is.
3.
I know. I love table for threes.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Long time listener, first time caller.
Dude, that's
man.
great, man.
So,
So-
man.
So I got to ask, right?
Yeah.
His nickname's Surfer Mike.
I know.
How'd you get the nickname? Let's start with the important things.
Yeah, right.
How'd you get the? Because I think Surfer
Mike.
cool.
Yeah.
Good question. When I first came into the program, I had some long, wild hair. That's maybe my guess. Okay. And I do know how to surf. I'm not good at it. I spent some time in California years ago.
Where in
and
Cali?
Just like outside, like Hermosa Beach
All right, okay.
area, and up through Huntington Beach and all that stuff.
Love
and
that
this
out
is
there. It's beautiful.
This is going back, early 20s, and I did learn how to surf. And I don't know, there was a couple people in the program just gave me that name.
That's awesome.
I got
I guess I was rough around the edges.
I got Smiley Mike. You got Surfer Mike. I
Yeah.
definitely want to
Surfer
change.
Mike's much cooler.
Oh, much cooler.
Much cooler.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we, I was out there recently.
Yeah, you've been
Huntington
out there.
Beach.
Right.
And we met this dude, Eric, and he's been on a couple recent episodes, and he reminds me of Surfer Eric.
Oh, yeah.
But man, there's so much recovery out there in California, it's not even funny. But
So much recovery
Mike is-
everywhere.
Yeah,
Glenn.
Mike is great. There's so much recovery right here at the coffee shop.
I know, right.
So Mike, thanks for jumping in, man. I look forward to hearing your story, your experience, strength, and hope, and getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been sober just to get started here since April 10th, 2022.
All right.
Okay, so
Nice.
approaching that
So
3
two and a
years.
half years.
Yeah, about
So would you consider yourself a COVID baby?
I would have to say possibly.
Well,
Right, because it was right in the middle of it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was toward the tail end is when
Yeah,
I got
okay.
into this program, but
So you got 2.5 years, right?
yeah, about 2.5 years. So I say
that's
by
awesome.
by 22, COVID was near its end.
Yeah.
But
And so were you?
Yeah, so was I. COVID did not help any
That's awesome.
situations. During COVID, I
Did
bought
it fuel it?
I would say it fueled a lot of it. I work in an industry. I'm an insurance agent. I run my own business. So, I had that, a lot of freedoms that came along with
Yep.
that.
Work from home was involved.
Same with consultancy.
Yeah, work from anywhere was involved,
Right.
and what that led to was temptations and I wouldn't say I was that disciplined on the work side of things.
Right.
I could use any excuse at any time to say, hey, I'm going to go see a client. I'm out and about. I'm rubbing elbows. And I had that under wraps for the most part. And then when COVID hit, the limitations
Oh,
were,
sure. Yeah.
you couldn't go down the street without people giving you a look like, what are you even doing out?
Yeah, right.
So that kind of just, I don't like change. People don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, I was not necessarily a stay-at-home type drinker. I just found a way wherever I could to use an excuse to be out of the house and drinking. And if I remember correctly, too, the hard shutdowns only lasted a few months,
Right.
and then things started opening up with restrictions and so on and so forth. But I always used that as an excuse to be out and about. And I was more of a not at home drinker. I was more of a social drinker that ended up kind of going overboard.
Right,
You know?
which is bizarro because there was social and COVID was that oxymoron we talked about. It's like, are you kidding me? You got nowhere to be social. Bars are closed.
No, I was laughing during COVID. So I had a client at that time that they were a liquor store, right?
Oh wow!
And the joke was, people just came in and they fill their cart with booze, and the whole joke was, hey, I'm coming in for the third time this week to stock up for a month.
Yeah, right.
Because there was just so much drinking going on, and just the isolation and just fuel for alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do remember right when they're saying there was a time at the beginning that on March, say 19th, everything is shutting down.
Shutting down, right.
And I, like I said, I wasn't a stock up, take it home type guy, but I was on March 18th.
Right, sure.
You know, and that
I was at the bread store.
Yeah,
you were at the liquor store.
Yeah,
Get
you
the
like
case
bread.
discount.
That's right.
You're a big
Get
bread
the
guy.
15% off.
Yeah, so so the answer to that question, that didn't really affect my drinking. I thought I was knee deep in alcoholism, drugs, and gambling well before that too.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make it clearer. I'm the type of guy I have like the trifecta. I have 3 addictions that are equally as powerful as the others. And that's where
You're an overachiever.
I am an overachiever. I mean, that's the only thing I think I was good at multitasking in my entire life was mixing those 3. And that's where I stand like today. And I don't mean to jump all the way to today about it, but it's always it's a war on 3 different ends.
Sure. So what are the 3?
Well, it's the alcoholism,
drugs.
It's drugs and,
okay.
and it's gambling.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I've had success for the last 2.5 years on 2 of the 3. I have not done any drugs. I have not drank a sip of alcohol.
Yep.
But I have relapsed a time or 2 with gambling. So, and that's something that I'm still working on.
It's another one of those things like alcohol. Drugs are a little different, right? And that's part of my story for certain. But it's not socially acceptable. To go to the casino is a socially acceptable, entertainment option. To have a drink here at dinner, to have a drink after dinner, to have a drink before dinner, all these things are socially acceptable. Where drugs weren't, which makes it tough.
I know. So Mike, we're working on this project, right? And we recently did a survey. We sent out to 500, of our sober buddies or whatever, and found that, and we listed 8 different addictions, right? And you talk about cross addictions, right? Like you have 3. You know what the average is of all the respondents?
Wow.
Everybody had an average of 2.3 addictions.
Really? Wow.
And gambling was on the list. Drugs was on the list. Alcohol was on the list.
Is Amazon a category or?
Shopping was on the list.
Okay, then there you go.
And sex, love, porn was on the list. Overeating or eating disorders was on the list.
Yeah. Wow.
How about workaholics? Was that on the list?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But see, it's so socially acceptable, man. In fact,
Sure.
people are impressed. Oh, man, Mikey's such a hard worker, But you know what? Mikey might have a real problem of escaping everything else in his life and pouring it all in. Instead of booze, he pours it in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I grew up with a stepfather who, my parents were divorced at an early age, both got remarried. I grew up with a stepfather that was a workaholic. And anger was a big part of his resume as well. And when things didn't go his way, just like when things don't go an alcoholic's way or drug addict's way, what does he do? He takes it out on the family. And he would be working 16 to 18-hour days. And I grew up pretty much on my own and raising myself. And I don't blame that by any means, of what caused my addictions. But I just remember, when things, he come home and when things aren't done the way he wanted to have them, all hell broke loose,
right,
and it made it that, we've all experienced that, walking on eggshells maybe in some part of our life.
And did I put my family under that same curse? That's
correct.
Walking on. Oh boy, he's got
time.
a buzz going. Don't get him riled up.
Or what type of guy is gonna pull up in that driveway? What's this? What lies is he gonna tell me? But I grew up with that, And to me, that's an addiction too. That people just automatically assume, well, that's not a bad addiction because I'm working, for a roof over the head and food on the table. But addictions to me is when it consumes who you are and it affects everybody around you. It's problematic.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And I just grew up in a household where I just felt like, for many years, all the way up until I was an adult, that I never wanted to be home and around him when he was in his way. Right. So just like my family and my friends didn't want to be around me toward the end with the way I was. I was just a monster, and so I'm sure that made your list as well, Glenn.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man, and it's but it's just amazing because a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I'll just get sober. Well, there's a lot of other things going on, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so 2.5 years ago, what happened? What brought you in?
Well, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, I always love hearing about the straw.
Yeah. Well, married at the time, I just had a son. My son is a little over 3 years old. Mm-hmm. He'll be 4. So I'll be 3 years in April sober. He'll be 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I ended up having almost an intervention that January, so 3 months before I went into a rehab facility. And that January, my father came over on a Saturday afternoon out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh boy,
that's trouble.
Yeah, and we had a kind of a kitchen table conversation, kind of like this, and it was my soon-to-be ex-wife, my father, and myself, and my father and I are business partners, so he's seeing it on the work end of things, why I'm not showing up and I'm not doing my part.
He's seeing many meetings, little results.
Yeah, many, yeah.
God, he's working hard.
Yeah. And then, so, and
awesome.
There's no communication between him for many years and my wife, okay? Mm-hmm. So she's seeing it on the home front. He's seeing it on the business front. I have a drinking problem. I didn't get into the drugs and the gambling too much, even though the gambling has been for a while.
Right.
So, and I said, okay, I'm going to stop drinking.
Sure.
I'm going to prove to you I'm not an alcoholic.
Sure.
I'm going to stop.
I'll just stop that.
And I did for 2 days.
Okay.
How long? 42 days?
I think, because
I thought you were going to say 42 minutes.
I'm Xing the calendar. I'm not an alcoholic. I told you guys. And my wife went out of town for like 2 days, and it was an absolute disaster for those 2 days. And I remember too, I was always smart enough to have a plan. So where the lies start, and when people start saying, well, you subconsciously relapse well before you physically relapse, okay? Now, I'm not working a program, but I'm like, well, I have this, I'm overloaded at work. I have this meetings. So watch, I told the in-laws, watch my son, for these 2 days where she happens to be out of town. Well, no meetings, yeah, it was definitely a storm. It was. And she came home to, the evidence is there, the evidence is there. And it was like, here we go again. And then I'm like, okay, this is not going to happen again. Because I never promised to stop for life.
Right.
At that time. I'm not, I'm just saying I'm not an alcoholic. And, one story after the other led to what ends up happening is when I go, hey, I'm going to be home at 6 o'clock and I don't get home till 9 or 10.
Right. Yep.
And I come home reeking of booze and I'm using an excuse saying I'm at the gym or whatever. It
they have an open bar
off.
At the gym?
It's a new aftershave.
You know what I said? It's the mouthwash.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what they do with the mouthwash.
Yeah, that gym.
But it's the creamer in my coffee. I haven't been drinking.
I'll lay off the cream,
Yep.
So, I mean, it just progressed, and where the straw comes in is she was part of a book club, and it involved my college friends' wives. Okay, and it was her turn to host, and she gets the house all dialed up. It's a big deal, and it's supposed to start at like 7 p.m. and I go, I'm going to go to the gym and I'll be home by like 7:30. The old wink gym, and we have at the time a 6-month or 8-month-old son. Or maybe a little bit more, maybe 10 months old. And for the most part, he was a great sleeper. He sleeps through the night, all right? So put him to bed, have your book club downstairs. I'll be back, soon after in case something happens. Well, I didn't return till 1 a.m. And go figure, all hell broke loose again with my son, and he
wakes
was a
up
screaming mess.
Yeah.
And everybody's looking around, and she's calling, and I'm like, relax, I'll be home. And it just never showed up. And she was beside herself. And by the time I got home, I was absolutely wasted. Absolutely wasted. And she's a school teacher, so she got up in the morning, and my role in the morning is to take him to the in-laws, so then I go to the office, you know, quarter up the office, right? And I remember waking up and trying to, you know, snap out of it. And she's already gone to work, and the baby's still sleeping. And I'm getting out of the shower, and I hear the door open. She comes home from work. She goes all the way into work, comes home. She's so distraught, and she says, "I'm taking your son. I'm out of here. I'm out of here."
That's a big straw.
Yeah. So by then, my dad caught wind. I made it to the office, and my dad sits there and tells me, he's like, "My gosh, do you love your family? What is going on? We've had this talk."
Yeah.
He goes, "Go home. Go home. Just get home and stay home." Well, I did not go home. And I did not stay home. I went on a 3-day just rampage where they were like a search party looking for me. It was just to the point where I don't like to swear, but it was the efforts.
Yeah, right. Sure.
I was pretty much like, okay, you're taking the kid. And I'm not sitting there like all of a sudden I care about the kid.
Yeah, right.
You know? And by the time they found me, after a gambling spree, drugs, and alcohol all through the weekend, I managed to make it back home to another intervention to say, no, you're getting into a rehab facility, and the only bed we could find is in West Garfield Park in Chicago, and it's 7 a.m. sharp on Monday.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, yeah. So, and I got shipped off there, and it was quite the place, quite the experience, but it scared me straight to the point, and I don't mean to fast forward that far, but that was really what got me into this entire program. That was a Kickstarter for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, what's amazing to me is that, and I so relate because I wasn't going to give up. My line was, it ain't about the drink. It's about something's going on in my head. So I can handle the drink when I'm not handling it at all, right? I'm like, I can handle this. But the 42-day thing, you know, you're committed to like short term forever, and 42 days into it, you're back where you started from, and I could so relate to that. But now I know you because we go to a lot of the same meetings, and you are consistent, you're diligent, you're persistent, you're a program guy, and it's working for you. 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years. It's remarkable.
Yeah, you know, and I
coming off of that story.
It's a good story.
Yeah, and I credit it though because you know, I mean, let's face it. You get out, it's like Belushi and
Aykroyd,
and Aykroyd. You know, you hear it. The gates are open, the car's waiting for you. You're on your way, and the whole world is there to swallow you up again. And if it wasn't for my family during my stay saying, well, we can't just let this bird out of his cage. You know, we got to have a plan. And that's my thought, too. Like, I thought I knew everything. Like, oh, don't worry, I'll figure it out. No, for the first time ever, I needed a plan.
So, Mike, was this like a 30-day rehab type thing?
Yeah, it was 30 days, and I managed to squeeze myself, con my way out a little bit before.
You learned to say the right things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Play the part.
But, and my whole life I was like that.
Oh, sure. I could
in
say
school, I was like that. In college, I was like that. Call it the gift of gab.
I got the magic line.
Yeah,
influence.
I know exactly what they want to hear.
Whatever we're going to use.
I'm going to slide. Hey, I'm a C student. Let me just slide my way by, and after a while, that's exhausting.
Right.
It really is to act like that. But, here's the kicker, and this is where I left out. My son was turning 1 year old, and they had a big birthday party for him, and I was still in rehab. Yeah. And my thought was, I'm going to con my way out a couple of days before, so I could, or a day before, so I can attend. Apologize here.
Sorry.
So I could attend his first birthday. Okay. So once again, this is my attitude and my cockiness, I would call it, is here I am.
Look,
and
I'm cured.
My entire family on both
the
in-laws and on both ends say absolutely not. You are not allowed.
Yeah, wow.
And I remember sitting at home sober, arguably probably the worst day of my life, knowing that I could not attend. My friends are there from college and from grade school. This is a bash.
Big deal.
That was
This is
an
a big
absolute genius insight for you. You know,
it really brings it all to reality of what I caused. And this may sound cliche, but you miss one and you miss them all.
Yep.
And that's what keeps me motoring to the best of my ability, through this. And I needed that game plan, though. Back to that plan. If it wasn't for me getting into an outpatient program and eventually finding a fellowship in an AA program, I wouldn't be having a microphone in front of my face right now. Absolutely not. I don't belong at the table here,
Right.
And that's where every day I got to sit there and realize that it's more than me. I brought life. I brought another human on this planet, and he is my son. And luckily, he's not going to remember any of my ultimate goal is for him not to say, "Hey, I didn't know that my father was an alcoholic because he never drank in front of me.
Right.
I didn't know he was a drug addict because he never did drugs in front of me."
I have a question for you, though,
Yeah.
because they say, and I kind of buy into it, that you got to do it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for a lot of years, I know what I chose over my family. I chose booze over my family. They tolerated me, right? They didn't kick me out at that moment. They tolerated me because I was just on the cusp of out of control, right? And my point is that I tried to quit for those that I brought into this world, and it didn't work for me. I mean, I really wanted to, but I couldn't do it. At what point did you combine, I'm doing this for Mike as much as I'm doing it for my little guy?
Well, initially, I had to do it for myself because when you start mixing drugs and alcohol, you could die.
Quite a cocktail.
It's supposed to be, come on, you could die. You could die, especially with all that crap that's going around
out there now,
right now.
Right.
And I didn't want to die.
Yeah.
It's plain and simple. And I don't like to use the term selfish because I really don't think, once you get a grip of this program, your job is to carry the message and help others, right? So
Which is what you're doing right now.
Right. So that's, to me, the opposite of being selfish. Yeah. So, but initially I had to be selfish. Right away, you do have to be selfish because, especially at my time, I didn't have access to my son.
Right.
Okay. I was living alone. I was being watched and monitored.
Oh, sure.
All right. I really was.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I have to come to grips with this myself before I could start.
Okay.
And that took a while.
So
that wasn't initial. I didn't have that right away. Oh my God, I'm just going to do this for my son. No, I had to actually figure out this whole sober thing.
Yeah.
Actually figure out for the first time ever to listen to another adult.
I know, right?
Like,
what do you know about
Call
the sponsor is going to tell me, don't talk to me until you read the first 164 pages, and then we're going to dive in. What?
Yeah.
I got to read?
I love those guys.
Are you insane?
You're telling me what to do?
Hey, I run my own business, which I never was there anyway, right? So all of a sudden, I'm running my own business. I'm too busy.
You're a big shot. Right?
So I really just had to sacrifice all the things that I liked in order to get clean. That is initially it has to be selfish, and a lot of people aren't going to understand that. But where I got lucky is they had no other choice. I was still loved by my friends and my family, and they said, "Well, whatever it's going to take," and that's our attitudes too. We got to say, whatever this is going to take, we have to dig deep and figure this stuff out, because if not, like you said, it does come with initial selfishness.
Right. And there's never you never have it figured out. It's always a process of figuring it out.
No graduation. So you're in AA. You got a sponsor. 2.5 years sober. What step are you on?
Well, I'm ready for step 12.
Okay.
But it's the first time.
I'm out always say you're doing it right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but it's the first time I have the confidence that I'm actually ready, and this just happened within the last month or two. I kind of switched switched into a new gear recently. I was stagnant for a while, and we talk about complacency and all that stuff. So I started switching some things around. I started talking to my higher power a little more, just getting out of my own. And it took a while because I was not ready. I could sit there and look you guys both in the eye and say, "Oh, I got through my steps." Well, if I would have told you that 2.5 months ago, I would have been completely BSing both of you. And I like the meetings where there's one meeting.
Well, if you're BSing, that means you're not through the steps.
Well, I'm not doing stuff. There's those principles everybody talks about, but and
damn those principles.
In the last, I don't owe you guys a lie. That's
Right.
I mean, why am I doing
Life's
that?
easier,
why
man.
am I doing that? So it took me a while. Some people could sit there and get these things done in months. It took me almost 3 years to finally say, hey, I'm ready to take on somebody if they do tap my shoulder.
That's awesome,
And
man.
it
That's
took a
awesome.
while.
And I'll tell you,
but
it's life-changing.
Yeah, but 12-step work is so much further beyond just being a sponsor.
Right. Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's
it's
just
doing
like-
things like this.
Yeah,
It's-
absolutely,
right.
man. There's 1,000 ways to serve people. But I think for me, and I know we've talked about it a lot, step 12 is just having a servant mentality. Think about Mike more than I think about, or before I think about myself. Think about Mikey. I mean, that changed my life, and to the point where serving people is a superpower.
You touched light on that. My first 12-step call, I was about 7 months into the program. Okay, and it was a client of mine who's a friend who his nephew was in a lot of trouble. Okay, and he says, "Hey, I know you're in the program," because I never shied away from that.
Right.
I was excited to at least say, "Man, is the weight of the world off my shoulders?
Yep.
I'm seeking help, and I'm highly involved in a program."
Yep.
And I let everybody know that. Okay, that was close to me, and it spread to a client/friend, and he needed my help. And I went and I got another person into rehab. It took a while, but that's where, to shed light on your point here, Glenn, just because you worked all the way from 1 to 12, okay, I'm through the 12th step. Now I can do that type of work or do that type of action. No, the second you're in that program, you may need to help somebody else.
That's right.
Immediately.
I think it does. It's that weird thing when a newcomer comes in the room and they open their mouth. I listen like it's E.F. Hutton. I mean, I listen because
I mean, I don't learn from the 40-year guy because I can't imagine what 40 years sobriety
Right.
looks like.
Right.
I mean, I respect that.
Yep.
But that 30-day guy, I've been there so many times, and I can, I use that to remind myself, but serving goes out. I remember my first rehab I was in. My temporary sponsor talking about serving, and I'm like, I don't, there's no way I can serve. I don't know anything yet. And he goes, look, take your fucking Gucci's off, get in the kitchen and help out.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, okay, yes, sir. But that's what it's about. I mean, it does. You don't have to have some miraculous. It can be simple as pouring coffee around the meetings. And that's getting outside of yourself, getting in action, and thinking about somebody else. Somebody else might need a cup of coffee.
right.
I mean, what rehab facility was here with Gucci's? I had my roommate, and mine came in with no shoes off the street. He goes, I don't know where my shoes are. He's got Gucci's out
right
there.
now, let me
what?
So let me clarify. They say that alcoholism is progressive. My first rehab, I was in a penthouse suite overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Laguna Beach.
Okay.
I have been to one in Chicago, up in, I forget where it was, Lakeview or somewhere. I slept on the floor for a week.
Wow.
And I was fearful for my life.
Wow.
It was a non-medical detox.
Yeah.
So I've been to both ends.
I mean, my brother snuck in Twizzlers, or not snuck in, he brought Twizzlers, and by the time they went through security to make sure there was no heroin wrapped on them, I was bribing them, the phone guy, when we had an hour of phone call, I gave him 3, I mean, this thing was a prison, man.
Yeah,
I was from, I go,
you had a currency.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
got 3 Twizzlers, and I'm on the top of the list. I
had
go,
a
my
currency.
God. I mean,
That's
so this
awesome,
guy's
man.
got Gucci's overlooking Laguna. But to prove your point, you're right. I don't care what facility you're in. You're away from your family. That
I
was
took it
crucial.
serious because I was away from my family. I took it serious the entire time. So we got somebody coming in to take the table away. Before we do, though, tell me about 2.5 years. Tell me about the little guy and how that's where you at mentally. Not really compared to 2.5 years ago, but just really, where are you? Put what's your temperature?
Impatient at times.
Mm-hmm.
For what? For what?
Good honest answer.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Just want more?
No. In relation to my son,
Yeah.
he's learning how to potty train, learning how to, speak.
But you're fully back with him.
Oh yeah,
and
well,
co-parenting
not fully. It's I do have possession,
right.
of him right
Right.
now, and right now, hey, bills are paid, work is better.
Right.
I still tend to drift, but not down that road.
Right,
but
right.
it's I'm working out a little more. I feel like I'm
Well,
healthier.
you're a surfer.
Yeah,
you
I'm a
gotta work
surfer,
out.
and I have surfed since I've been sober. I do travel, but just in a nutshell, I have my ups and downs. We talked about
Good
that
for you. That's honest.
complacency,
Yeah.
and I don't have the obsession to drink. But I'm a natural born sinner. My defects are going to be there. I got to keep them at bay. And I have weeks. This past week wasn't the best week. I found out some some disturbing news. I'm trying to work through it. But at the end of the day, I could build that bear pyramid up
Yes.
until the sun comes up and drink and just be an absolute monster, or I could just sit in it and figure out a way out of it. I have to stay busy,
Right.
one way or the other. So to wrap up your comment, I'm happier for the most part, but I understand the work does not stop,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have my months. I'm going to have my days. I just got to make sure that it just doesn't roll over to the old way of handling things. That's all.
Mike,
It's a struggle. It
Mike,
still is,
have you embraced forever yet?
There's no forever. There's no
Yes.
such thing, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah, there's no such thing. There's two certainties in life. I always said there's death and there's taxes. Okay, it's not certain that I'm going to stay sober, but life's just going to be way better if I do.
Yeah.
So
Excellent, man. Will
That's
you come
awesome,
back
man.
and visit us again?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man.
All right. Awesome, Mike.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Keep the
man.
coffee hot. All right, thanks,
See you,
guys.
man.
Surfer Mike.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago.